Welcome to Sex Talk with Kelly. I invite you to spend the next 30 minutes embracing your sexuality and exploring your edges. We've got a hot show for you today. We're talking about desire in couples. As well, we'll be providing you with some tips to spice up your sex life. Let's get this sexy show on the road. We have a true sexuality powerhouse with us, and she brings pioneering research with her along the way. She's soon to be my best friend, and she doesn't even know it. Dr. Robin Milhausen is a sex researcher and media celebrity sexologist, a high-profile professor at the University of Guelph, and someone I truly admire. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for that introduction.
Yeah,
I'm in for the best friends.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing. So you've recently released findings from a new study, and you partner with some pretty major people, Sex Information and Education Council of Canada, as well as Trojan Canada. And I love that this study debunked a common misconception that sexual desire or pleasure can decline as we age.
Absolutely.
So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we were really excited about this partnership because this is the very first data ever to capture the sexual lives of 40 to 59-year-old Canadians. Prior to this, there had been no national data. And we asked so many questions about the midlife Canadian sexual lives, from what they did in their last encounter, how satisfied they are, their experiences of sexual problems, their sexual communication. And we found, you're right, a lot of really affirming findings, especially as someone who's in that demographic. I feel really great about the next 19 years of my life. We found pleasure did not decrease with age, that people were just as likely to say their last sexual act was very pleasurable if they were 59 or 41.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's important for our viewers at home to know that, right? Like, sex can get better with age.
Definitely.
So what are some of the key factors that are playing into having a good sex life?
Well, here's one that will probably surprise you, and it is marriage.
Okay.
Marriage gets a bad rap for, the decline in sexuality and sort of monotony and routine. But the married people in our survey reported more frequent sex, and the men in our survey who were married reported more pleasurable sexual encounters than the unmarried men. So I think this goes to debunk a lot of the myths that that marriage is the death blow to sexuality. And certainly, as you know, it comes with challenges, that monotony and routine are real, but it also comes with comfort and the ability to communicate about what works for you and what doesn't, and to just say it straight up, like, this isn't working for me, or can we try this, which people may feel more comfortable doing than with a new sexual partner.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point in terms of people who are together longer. They can build more trust and more safety to take things maybe to a deeper level or a more erotic place than they would with a newer partner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing going for married people is they're having sex more frequently than their single counterparts because they have an available partner. So I think there is this idea that the grass is greener, that single folks are out there sowing their oats, but actually the married people are having more regular sex than single people, according to our data.
Yeah, and that's great. And I also believe I read in there that there was a new risk coming out for single people because they weren't really worried about STIs with engaging in sex. So that's something for public health to be mindful of.
Yes, for sure. And that was a major focus of the study, being organized by the Sex Information Education Council of Canada and also Church and Dwight, the makers of Trojan. Sexual health was a major focus. And it was potentially not totally surprising, but most of the sample reported they were not very or not at all concerned about STIs. And it's not surprising because we're seeing the STI rate go up in midlife and older adults. Sexually transmitted infections are increasing among this older age group. So it isn't surprising that our data suggests they weren't very concerned, but it definitely suggests we should be doing more education with this age group.
Yeah, which is great, because with that we can have some impact and maybe get ahead of it, right?
Yeah.
And have people take their sexual health a little bit more seriously in that regard.
Absolutely. And these folks are maybe back on the dating scene. They haven't had to negotiate condom use or talk about safer sex in decades, and so they may feel slightly uncomfortable about that. And hearing these findings just kind of normalizes. No, midlife people are sexually active. Midlife people are coming back on the dating scene, and condoms are just a normal part of that experience. If you're in a heterosexual partnership, condoms are a normal part of that. And we've kind of gotten that idea out, you know, amongst high school students.
Yes.
We've done previous research with university students, a national sample, and they were more likely to use condoms than the midlife sample. So there's this thing called safer sex fatigue. As you age, you start to think, oh, it can't happen to me. I'm not at risk even more. The more times you're sexually active and no negative outcomes happen, the more likely you are to think, oh, I'm going to be fine. And so we've done a pretty good job with high school students. We just need to keep working through all the age groups to make sure that midlife and older people don't realize or don't fail to realize they're at risk.
Yeah, and that they use the appropriate or proper protection to keep themselves and their partner safe as they're having pleasurable sex.
Exactly.
And so communication was another big one that touched on. So people in happy, healthy sexual relationships had good communication. So by good communication, is this outside of the bedroom, inside of the bedroom? What communication and like what good communication are we talking about?
Well, our study, we measured frequency. So it was those who had the most frequent communication about their sexual likes and dislikes. Those were the vastly more likely to be very sexually satisfied. And that I'm sure makes sense to you as a therapist, that we don't just fall into good sex and our partner, what are the chances they're going to randomly come to the exact thing we like? So if we can communicate about the things we like, then we are far stacking the deck in our favor to actually have those things happen. But as long as they just stay a fantasy in our own minds, they're probably not going to magically come to fruition.
Our partners are not mind readers. And as we spend a lifetime together, if we're talking about monogamous relationships and marriage, that your wants and needs will change and can change over time. So even if you've communicated and you started acting out a sexual script in one way, if it starts to change or you're wanting something different, then you need to keep having those dialogues over and over again.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm doing the research that I'm in. This is my personal focus, having been with a partner for almost 20 years and looking at the next 50 years. How do we stay excited about waking up with this person every day? How do we stay excited about going to bed with the same person every day? And if you do the same things again and again and again, they kind of wear out. So it's really important to recognize that, yes, sexual scripts change, and it's not just one conversation, but many.
And it's building that trust in your relationship, that if one of us is unhappy, that we trust the other person to be able to bring it up. So if I'm walking around thinking that things are going pretty good, I'm going to trust that my partner, if something's off with them or they're wanting something different, I'm going to trust that they're going to bring it up as well, right?
Right. And I think I get that question a lot when I'm speaking out in the world about sexuality. How would I raise this with my partner? How will they react? And I think the costs of raising these things are actually less than the costs of not raising it. I would much rather know what's going on in my partner's mind than not know and then find out that he's acting out his fantasies in some way outside of our relationship. So if the choice is knowing what you like and figuring out ways we can integrate it into our sex life, or having you find other ways to meet your needs, I would rather know. And I think that can be helpful for people thinking, how do I psych myself up to raise this conversation? I think to think about the cost of not doing so can be a motivating factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Stick around. We'll be right back with more with Robin. Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Robin Milhausen, and she's about to get into how often are Canadians, midlife Canadians, having sex based on your findings.
Right. This is a question a lot of people wonder. They were all wondering, how often are our neighbors having sex? And the people in partnered relationships tended to be the majority of them having sex once a week on average. And interestingly, that really dovetails nicely with some research from a Toronto researcher, Amy Muse, amazing, brilliant researcher, who wondered, do the benefits of sex level off? Because there's research in economics that suggests that if you make a certain amount of money, there's no benefit to making more than that. So she wondered, can we apply this to sex, and would the benefits of sex level off? And she found with her research, using 3 national samples, 2 from the US, a study in Canada, that actually the benefits of sex level off at once per week. So if you have sex more often, that's a bonus, but if you can aim for once a week. That tends to be the sweet spot for maintaining connection.
All right, you heard it here first. Sweet spot, once per week.
But interestingly, other research suggests it doesn't work to just double the amount of sex you're having. So to just prescribe having sex is not effective if there are reasons why you're having sex less often. Often we have busy lives. Sometimes we're caring for young children or aging parents. So I don't want people to beat themselves up if they're not having sex once a week or more, and think that we all go through ups and downs, ebbs and flows.
Yes.
But you can get maximal life happiness benefits from just doing it once a week. So you don't have to set the bar at every night.
And I think that you're hitting on something important, that our sexuality will ebb and flow. So sometimes we might be having it more frequently, and other times it might taper off, and all of that is okay. You can get yourselves into trouble if you're forcing it when you're just not there.
Yeah, and I think it ties back to everything you were saying about communication. Because if you can communicate to your partner, I love you, I'm attracted to you, I'm just exhausted, and then they don't take it personally. It's when the sex stops happening, and then we start to wonder what's going on in our partner's mind, that then sort of insecurities can breed. But keeping the lines of communication open through the lulls can be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. So let's talk about the afterplay.
Yeah, one of the other neat findings from this study, and actually was also inspired by Amy Muse's work, where she was studying post-sex affectionate behavior. It's well known that foreplay is important, that taking time to connect physically and emotionally before sex can enhance the sexual encounter. But Amy wondered about post-sex affectionate behavior and has done some work on that. So we added this question to our national survey, and we found that actually being kind, affectionate, warm, touchy for 6 minutes after sex greatly increased your odds of rating the sexual encounter as pleasurable. So it had a major impact. And I find this actually is really helpful as a therapist to give as homework, because you can do this on your own. You don't need your partner's buy-in per se. Like, one person can just try it at home. Try being a little snuggly after, or try giving some feedback about the things that were really awesome in the encounter. Nestle in and snuggle rather than rolling over. And Amy's research has shown this paid dividends in the relationship months down the road. So it's pretty neat. This is an untapped time for us to maximize connection. And from an evolutionary perspective and a hormonal perspective, you've got oxytocin coursing through your body after orgasm. You're primed to feel connected. So I say you get more bang for your buck just being nice for 6 minutes after sex than like 6 minutes at 8 in the morning or 6 minutes after lunch.
Right. No, I think that's a really important piece of information that our viewers can take away from here is the afterplay piece, right? We're so concerned with foreplay and warming up and getting into the mood, but after a beautiful or fun erotic sexual encounter, it's just as important to bask in the glory of that experience. And that you're in a vulnerable place. You're both feeling pretty good about what just happened, and so why not hold on to that for a little bit longer? Yeah,
and you're right, we are feeling really vulnerable, and so if we're feeling maybe not so good, it's a good chance to validate somebody. Like we may have just put ourselves out there, tried something new, and be feeling a little insecure. So it's especially important to be validating and warm afterwards. You probably, as a therapist, say don't do too much like constructive feedback in the bedroom, like related to sex, and talk about that as outside the bedroom. But I do advocate for a bit of a post-game wrap-up where we say nice things after sex. I really liked this. When we did this, it was so cool. And that's likely to imprint and then be more likely to be repeated in a future time. Yeah, and invited into another encounter down the road, right? And it sinks in like, oh, they really like that. I want to make sure that I bring that up next time, or be mindful of the opportunity next time. Or if something felt very good for you, I'm sure your partner or partners would love to hear about it. Absolutely. You give me goosebumps. Yeah. This is definitely, Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here, Dr. Milhausen. Thank you. And you can follow her on Twitter. And we'll be right back for more. Up next, I love that we have my friend and colleague here from Bliss Counseling, sex therapist and board-certified sexologist, Lindsay Kenna. She will be talking to us about tips for spicing up your sex life. Thanks for being here, Lindsay.
Thank you.
So as sexologists, we are often asked how people can spice up their sex life by not necessarily doing something extreme, but what are some mindful ways that people can start to spice things up?
Yeah, so there's a few simple things that you can do. The first one would be changing the times that you have sex. So, I mean, times of the day. So if you're used to having sex in the evening or at night or with all the lights off, change it up and have sex in the morning or the afternoon or maybe with all the lights on.
That's a really good time of day as well, or a really good opportunity to check in with your energy levels, right? So if people are completely exhausted by the end of the day, or when they associate going to bed at night with going to sleep, then it might not be the most exciting time to have sex at that time. So
right, and then they probably fall back into like very vanilla or robotic routines. Another simple thing you could do would be to change the places that you have sex. So instead of just having sex in the bedroom, try having sex in the kitchen or on a countertop or the table. You can also try different surfaces, so like a very soft blanket or maybe in the shower.
so different textures as well.
Right, yeah, different textures for sure. So there's times you can also try and surprise your partner. So if you're used to just, like I said, having very vanilla robotic sex, maybe you could do something and step outside of your comfort zone, like buying some lingerie or maybe sending some flirty text messages throughout the day and kind of build up that anticipation for later on in the evening.
Yeah, building up anticipation is key, because a lot of times couples or partnerships in relationships, like they're just living their lives, right? So they could just look to their partner and be like, do you want to have sex now? And that's about as exciting as it's going to get, right?
Right.
So I like the idea of sending flirty text messages or flipping the sexual script. Is there a different way you could woo your partner into it versus just putting it out there?
Yeah, for sure. And then also, what about changing your different positions, right? So we usually have our go-to position. And like, what about exploring ones that you really do want to try, or maybe that your partner wants to try? Again, it's about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And then lastly, something that you could do would be focusing on your five senses. So trying to figure out for you which one of your five senses is the most erotic, and then connecting with that sense when you're having sex with your partner.
So how do you find out what senses for you are your most erotic? Like, how can you learn that about yourself?
So pay attention when you're having sex. For you, is it, do you like the way that your partner smells? Do you like the way that your partner tastes? Do they have a perfume that you like them to wear? Or maybe a body wash?
You like the way they touch?
Yeah, do you like the way that they touch you, or the way that they feel under your fingertips? Or even visual is a really big one. Do you like the way that they look when they're having sex or doing foreplay?
Right. And another good idea is maybe to be more vocal, right? So if you're not very vocal in bed, it's a really good opportunity to spice things up by saying things as they're happening, like, this feels really good right now, or I want you to do X, Y, Z, or can you please do more of that? That looks really good. Like, you know, give that positive feedback too, because a lot of times if you are having sex and maybe they're just the in-laws in the next room or you have kids that are sleeping, if you do have the opportunity to change it up with the time of day and have some alone time, bust out of your routine with trying to keep quiet and maybe be more vocal as well.
Right, and then when you're being more vocal, just be mindful of the words that you're using, right? Like, we don't want to send our partner negative messages because we don't want them to have that, the rejection piece.
Yeah, so positive, inviting, safety, communication, building that trust. Yeah, those are good ways to spice up your sex life. Anything else that you recommend to your clients that you see in terms of starting slow and how they can spice things up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that I often talk about with clients is slowing everything down. You can focus a little bit more on foreplay and the ways that you guys are kissing and touching and feeling one another. So don't really make it all about just like the penetrative piece. Really slow down the foreplay.
And I think it goes back to that goal-oriented sex, right? Like, if we can get away from that and even start doing more erotic massages and things like that where it can be drawn out, and the goal isn't necessarily to orgasm, but it's to be very sensual and erotic and intimate and vulnerable with your partner or partners as well.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
can help spice things up. And what about toys? Like, can toys be a good avenue to spice things up?
So some people are not into toys, some people are into toys. If it's something that you're curious about, I would suggest maybe doing some research. So go online, see what's kind of out there. You can go to one of like our local sex stores too. and talk to the workers there and be like, this is kind of what I'm interested in, what would you suggest? But also make sure that you're communicating with your partner about it so that you guys are kind of on the same page about your expectations. And then even going and shopping together can be really exciting and kind of set up the night.
Yeah, it can be a fun night out or a date night, an erotic date night. And again, reiterating what you like, what you don't like, what you're willing to try.
Right.
And if it doesn't go well, then we won't be trying that again, and that's okay. But maybe it goes really well, and you're like, let's do more of that. No, I think you've provided some really good tips for us today.
Awesome.
So how can people get in touch with you?
So you can go onto our website at Bliss Counseling. You can also check us out on Instagram or on Twitter. Or Facebook too.
Great, and people can book appointments for you for individual, relationship, and sex therapy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, can work with you for one-on-one. So anyone experiencing relationship challenges or sexuality difficulties, they're more than welcome to get in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Be right back. We'll be more to explore a new product of the week.